tonight's big stories. The House of Representatives, convening as a committee of the whole, decides to postpone its deliberations on charter change.
57 lawmakers signed a manifesto rejecting the proposal of former President Rodrigo Duterte for Mindanao to secede from the Philippines.
And the Senate is pushing for a bill seeking to impose harsher penalties on cyber criminals and scammers, including potential lifetime imprisonment.
Welcome to the show. I'm Regina Lay.
I'm Riza Diaz.
And I'm Sean Yao.
Okay, Chacha's back in the headlines tonight.
Surprise, surprise.
And of course, not talking about the dance, but I'm talking about the House of Representatives having to postpone their committee of the whole deliberations on constitutional amendments to next week. Deliberations on the resolution of both houses, or RBH number 7, were supposed to take place today. However, there were some issues with the availability of resource persons, prompting the lower house to reschedule. House leaders said the committee of the whole will convene 3 times a week beginning next week to tackle charter amendments.
We have already been inviting the resource persons and they'll be available on Monday. So it will be a series of hearings, and I do not yet have a definite timeline until when we'll be conducting the hearings. But definitely, we would allow members of the House of Representatives to exhaustively discuss and deliberate.
So yun, heads up na rin. Chacha's back in the headlines next week too, because
Right.
we're obviously going to be
Magkukonvene next week.
covering the 3 times a week meeting that they're going to be doing.
Of course, and in case you missed it, guys, if you're wondering, ano ba tong RBH 7? Because just a few weeks ago, it was all about RBH number 6.
Yes.
RBH number 6 is with the Senate, RBH 7 is with Congress. However, the economic amendments or the changes to economic provisions in the Constitution are similar for both RBH 6 and RBH 7.
May konting difference, di ba? As to like the voting of the...
Yun. Pero
They
hindi
haven't
konting
decided.
difference, pero yun yung that makes all the
It's
difference.
Small but
That's
big.
right.
But so basically, they haven't decided on the manner of voting. That's still a point of contention at this moment. RBH 7 does not specify whether they're voting together as a block or separately.
Separately. And that's really been the point of contention from the start of this whole Chacha argument. And as we can remember, the People's Initiative was pushing for joint voting. So I'm actually shocked that the House was not more aggressive and like specifying how they want to vote. But I guess they're listening to PBBM's advice to do this quietly and with less tension.
Well, that's actually what he mentioned, di ba? He actually said, you know, it's not like he is, or they're saying he's not intervening or he's not getting into the talks about it, but he's saying, you know, he believes that the both side can actually just talk it out and quietly resolve whatever needs to be resolved.
Maybe you're right. This is maybe them finally heeding the
Yes.
president's call.
Maybe. Well, nevertheless, the senators did welcome RBH 7 and on Wednesday, and the filing of this, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? I guess we'll just find out more details about RBH 7
Once they start deliberations.
next week. Right. And while the lower house opted to postpone their own Chacha hearings, some are still concerned that congressmen are rushing to get charter change up and running as soon as possible. So, how is the House leadership responding to these claims? We'll pose that question to Marian Enriquez. Maan, what do the lower house makers have to say?
Sean, House leaders insist that they are in no way taking a shortcut in dealing with charter change. They pointed out that they have only been persistent in pushing for it over the years.
Kung shortcut, hindi na kami mag-hearing 3 times a week. Diba? Mga 1 oras lang pwede na. But we want to show, we're gonna hear it 3 times a week. We're gonna hear it for a couple of weeks. Kung hanggang saan matapos yung mga tanong ng ating mga congressman. So ganun kaseryoso yung House of Representatives.
House leaders say they have been consistent in trying to get a sentiments of different stakeholders on Chacha.
Just to assure you, hindi po kami shortcut. In fact po, parang repeat performance na lang po ang ginagawa namin because nga paulit-ulit na po namin ginawa ito.
House Chacha proponents insist on its benefits for the economy and working class citizens, but it seems some groups remain unconvinced. Sean, the committee of the whole may have been cancelled, but groups led by Kilusang Mayo Una continued to voice out their dissent against Chacha through a protest. They said lawmakers should focus on other pressing matters like wage increase and inflation instead of charter change. Sean.
All right, thank you so much for that update. News 5's Marian Enriquez.
Now, in other news, Senator Amy Marcos has responded to claims that it was her who realigned 13 billion pesos in DSWD funding, which affected millions of four-piece beneficiaries. Senator Amy got into a heated exchange with Ako Bicol Party List Representative Raul Angelo Bungalon over this, which allegedly deprived some 4.3 million poor Filipinos of cash aid. Senator Marcos explained that 8 billion of the intended 13 billion budget for the four-piece program was realigned to other quickly implementable DSWD projects to prevent the budget from being underutilized. Now, the senator noted that during that time, the DSWD was still busy streamlining the list of qualified beneficiaries. Now, as for the remaining 5 billion pesos, Senator Amy said this provision was removed when the budget bill reached the BICAM level with no funding source available.
Baka nagkakamali siya kasi bago pa siya, hindi pa siya sanay. Alam naman ninyo, di ba, Ted, kapag hindi nagastos ng gobyerno ang pera, yung mga department sinusoli at the end of the year. Yun nga ang iniibsan natin na hindi magsoli kasi ayoko nagsusoli yung DSWD, kailangan ng mahirap. Yung remaining 5 billion, pinasok ko nga yan sa DSWD budget pero natanggal sa mahiwagang BICAM. Dahil nga, nung 2022, wala naman tayong pera. Siguro yun yung 13 na sinasabi ng mga medyo nahihilo siguro ng mga kongresista o hindi pa sanay masyado sa budgeting.
Akala ko ba ceasefire no between House and Senate?
Naku, Reg, maraming namamatay sa maling akala.
In other news, Pastor Apollo Kibuloy has spoken up about the Senate probe into the supposed abuses inside his church, the Kingdom of Jesus Christ. He says his life and his congregation are now in danger, and he even accused the U.S. of working with the Marcos administration to kidnap and assassinate him. What we're about to play is an audio message by Kibuloy posted on SMNI. Listen to this.
Hanggang maaga pa, Bongbong Marcos, Lisa Marcos, Martin Romualdez, bumaba na kayo sa posisyon. Mag-resign na kayo sapagkat hindi hihinto ang tinig na ito habang naririyan pa kayo.
The pastor did not show his face throughout the video, noting that he's currently in hiding as he's being chased down by the FBI and the CIA. Kibuloy said a source told him that President Marcos, First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos, and House Speaker Martin Romualdez are now working or cooperating with the U.S. government. Kibuloy is currently wanted in the U.S. over a number of charges, including human trafficking and sexual abuse.
Ayaw na raw po nila ng extradition treaty. Ang kanila daw pong gagawin ng CIA, ng FBI, ng US Embassy at State Department, kasabwat ng ating gobyerno, ng Pangulong Marcos at ng First Lady at kung sino pa man ang nasa gobyerno, ako ay rendition ng kanilang gagawin. Ang rendition, ang ibig sabihin po, anumang oras pwede lang pasukin ang aking compound at ako ay kidnapin. It's not only rendition, but also elimination. If it is possible, pwede nila akong i-assassinate.
The pastor says he also has information that the FBI has placed a $2 million bounty on his arrest, but there's no reward money indicated on his wanted poster on the FBI website. In total, Kibuloy is facing 43 counts of various charges in the United States. He's been indicted by the District Court in California for charges over sex trafficking, fraud and coercion, conspiracy, and cash smuggling. Kibuloy has been on the FBI's most wanted list since 2021. Despite these, Kibuloy maintains that he was sued without any reason in the U.S., and he says that he's ready to face the charges, but noted that the hearings have been pushed back and that the U.S. government has yet to send a request for his extradition.
Dahil nandito ako, I will use my constitutional rights for extradition na siyang treaty ng ating bansa. Yan po ang iniintay ng mga lawyers ko dito sa Pilipinas at sa Amerika.
May reaksyon na kaya ang United States at si Pangulong Marcos sa mga buwelta ni Pastor Kibuloy? And also, let's not forget that just last Monday, Kibuloy has been subpoenaed by the Senate over their probe into supposed abuses in his church. At ano kaya ang pahayag ng Senado sa nagyaring ito? Camille Samonte has the answers to those questions. Camille, what do you have for us?
The U.S. Embassy has released a statement on Kibuloy earlier today. They noted that for more than a decade, Apollo Kibuloy engaged in serious human rights abuses, including a pattern of systemic and pervasive rape of girls as young as 11 years old, and he is currently on the FBI's most wanted list. The embassy says it's confident that Kibuloy will face justice for his heinous crimes. News 5 also tried to get the side of President Marcos, but he did not grant an interview. As you mentioned, there is also an ongoing Senate probe into abuses in Kibuloy's church. He has been subpoenaed by both chambers of Congress over his absence in the proceedings. That's why Senator Risa Hontiveros warns that if Kibuloy still refuses to show up, she will cite him in contempt and have him arrested.
May patong siya sa ulo. Come on. Sabi ko nga, wag na siyang magpa-victim pa. Pagpapa-aresto sa kanya, then the committee will also feel able to ask the assistance ng PNP.
Despite this, Kibuloy says he will never face the senator. He says he would rather face those making allegations against him in court.
Right, thanks so much for that, Camille Samonte.
Now, if President Marcos refused to comment on Kibuloy's accusations, may statement naman si House Speaker Romualdez. He says while he understands the gravity of the accusations that Kibuloy faces on the international stage, specifically from the FBI, it is important to clarify that the Philippine government and its officials, including himself and President Marcos, operate within the bounds of our Constitution and laws. He adds that the claims of connivance with foreign entities for illicit activities are unfounded and divert attention from the serious legal matters at hand. With that, Romualdez encourages Pastor Kibuloy to address his legal challenges through the proper legal channels and respect the legal processes in place.
We're going to pause for a very quick one, but right after that, the Senate is going after scammers through a new bill. We'll find out more when the big story returns. Keep it here. Welcome back. You're watching the big story here in One News.
Right. This is the other big news, especially for a lot of parents out there. It was indeed a very busy Wednesday for Vice President and Education Secretary Sara Duterte as she spoke about the shift to the old school calendar. According to Vice President Sara, there is no other reason for the return of the old school calendar or to the old school calendar other than tradition and the preference of the majority. She insisted that their decision also went through consultations with teachers, parents, and students.
Sinimula namin sa National Capital Regions and then bumaba kami sa iba't ibang regions natin. Nag-consult tayo sa mga teachers, sa mga stakeholders, sa mga parents, and sa mga students. And wala siyang ibang rason, mainly because of tradition and preference ng karamihan.
The Vice President also ordered an investigation into the incident of a student firing a gun in a school in Sorsogon. The Vice President questioned how the student managed to slip the gun into the school to begin with. Meanwhile, the Vice President said that the Vice President had a quick answer to questions about Pastor Quiboloy's allegations that the government is planning to oust her.
I haven't heard or read the statement.
Now, more than 50 Mindanao lawmakers rejected the proposal of former President Rodrigo Duterte to separate Mindanao from the Philippines. To be exact, 53 congressmen from Mindanao, 3 party list representatives, and 1 congressman from the Visayas signed a unified manifesto against the secession. Now, although they did not mention any names, the lawmakers called for the, quote, diligent prosecution of all individuals and entities fostering disunity among our people, blatantly violating our Constitution and threatening the sovereign integrity of our nation. According to Congressman Muhammad Dimaporo, chairman of the House Committee on Muslim Affairs, Mindanao has gone through a lot. It is home to one of the poorest regions in the country, and it has been ravaged by war. With this, Congressman Dimaporo believes that the call for Mindanao secession will not help in their recovery.
The call for an independent Mindanao is a step backwards. So parang ang nangyayari, one step forward in terms of progress, tapos you'll call for an independent Mindanao, 2 steps backwards kami.
The National Security Council rejected China's claim that the U.S. and the Philippines are stirring up trouble in the West Philippine Sea with the conduct of joint patrols. In a statement, National Security Advisor Eduardo Año says the Philippines' engagements with the United States are well within our rights as a sovereign and independent nation. He says the Philippines is rejecting any assertion from other countries that seeks to undermine our legal and legitimate activities. Now, the Philippines is also urging China to respect the sovereign rights of the country conducted within its territory and consistent with its national interests and international law. Recall that China again accused the Philippines of, quote, stirring up trouble by engaging in joint patrols with the U.S. and further hyping that trouble up. This joint patrol between the two nations allows the Philippine troops to practice their response in the event of an airspace intrusion. A Reuters report also stated that Chinese air naval forces were deployed to closely monitor the joint drills. Chinese troops reportedly maintain, and I quote, a high degree of vigilance. In other news, here's something that we can all be happy about. The Senate is finally advancing a bill to punish scammers more harshly. The bill is called the Anti-Financial Accounts Scamming Act, or AFASA, which aims to protect consumers from various cyber crimes, including being used as money mules, social engineering schemes, and even economic sabotage. The bill proposes a fine of up to 500,000 pesos and even life imprisonment for those convicted of economic sabotage. Senator Mark Villar, who authored the bill, says if passed, this should serve as a big deterrent, since the problem with existing laws is that it still makes it very difficult to get information from banks and other financial institutions.
It is high time that we eliminate this self-assurance by enacting laws that will effectively address the looming problems of scamming. As presented, the responsiveness of our laws to address the rising number of financial scams is wanting. This is due to the fact that the modus of these scammers is evolving faster than the capability of our law enforcement agencies to deter them.
You may notice I said Senate is finally advancing this bill, and I say finally because the House, the lower house, actually passed its own version of this bill in May last year, so almost a year ago.
Almost 1 year.
AFASA then, it's the exact same title. Theirs was House Bill 7393, and they passed it on final reading again in May last year. So they've been calling on the Senate, by the way, to pass the counterpart measure. So,
instead of fighting, ito na lang gawin ninyo, di ba? I mean, this is more favorable to us because so many people are falling victim to scams. But it's also good to note that other senators are also actually in full support of this. So why not just push this instead of other things? Let's hear that soundbite.
And while financial education and literacy is still key in preventing these schemes, kinakailangan natin ng mas konkretong aksyon para habulin at parusahan itong mga manloloko at masasamang loob.
Tunay na nakababahala na sa kasagsagan ng pandemya kung kailan napakarami sa ating mga kababayan ang nawalan ng hanapbuhay ay libo-libong Pilipino rin ang nabiktima ng iba't ibang scams. Ginoong Pangulo, sa patuloy na pakikipaglaro ng mga kriminal, napapanahon na upang mabitag natin sila gamit ang panikil sa batas. Pangil ng batas. This is why we need the Anti-Financial Accounts Scamming Act. This bill establishes clear and severe penalties for those who willingly act as money mules, those who use social engineering schemes and other fraudulent means to solicit financial account information that may result to account takeover.
So according to the proposal, from January to August of last year, up to 155.2 million pesos was lost by some 8,000 victims of financial cyber crimes like online selling scam, investment scam, ATM fraud, or phishing.
Yung reported yan
I was gonna say,
yung na-scam din ako.
That seems like a really small figure.
I also didn't report nung na-scam din ako.
That seems like a really small figure to me. 155 million pesos, right?
But this is just, again, over
8,000
8 months. This is, again, just according to the Senate's
8
data.
months, not counting December, you mean, when people are, when the scams hit the roof, right? Go through the roof.
But this is my concern, right? I mean, I understand it's good to punish it, it's good to legislate, but, you know, the enforcement part has always been tricky here in the Philippines.
Yung implementation, that's,
diba?
that's
Kung
how...
mahuhuli mo sila, mapapatawan mo ng parusa, what if never mo sila mahuli? I mean, scammers are, you know, they have ways to hide. They usually... obviously go through false pretenses.
Your incident, what does it fall under? Phishing?
Online selling scam.
Online selling. So you bought something that turned out it was fake.
It was fake.
It was a fake
I tried
ad.
to return it, but it was bizarre. Like, I was blocked. I couldn't call the number anymore. Even the way I purchased it was so fake. Like, I clicked the button which was supposed to lead me to a checkout page, but instead, parang nabili ko na siya. And then JNT delivered it to my house. So I felt bad for the courier.
What was it? It was a rock or what?
It wasn't a rock. It was a counterfeit.
Okay.
It was a counterfeit product.
Did you deposit? It was an online selling scam too for you, right? If
Yeah,
I remember
and
correctly.
mine never arrived. The
Yours
seller
never
just
arrived.
vanished.
But you deposited the money into their account.
Right, I did.
Okay.
I transferred the money fully paid with delivery fee and everything. And then next thing you know, I can find nowhere.
And it was a legitimate bank account, right?
It was,
seemed
with
like
the name and all. So I thought, okay.
I thought you
parang
thought it would
legit,
be
right?
easy.
So here lies the problem, and the senators pointed it out correctly, which is that there are existing laws to protect consumers. The problem is the data privacy laws, right? And
It prevents them
the bank
from-
secrecy laws together. What that boils down to is it's hard to get data, even if you go to the authorities and say, oh, this is a
Right,
scammer. I
right.
transferred money to them. They can't. Their hands are tied.
They have restrictions.
Because
Sino
there's
mo naman
a
tayo,
lot
di
of
ba?
restrictions.
I mean, we're talking
correct.
about the big plunder cases where the government has difficulty getting this same
Oh,
information.
because of the bank secrecy laws, correct.
Exactly for the
Yeah.
same reason. So, medyo mahirap din talaga siya. And I do get a lot of emails from the SEC where they also close down a lot of these companies
they
that give
try.
investment scams.
Yeah.
And recently I got a PR from them, a press release, saying that they close they close one almost every day, I think, or every week, or a couple every week. But there was an email where they closed down a whole bunch of them. So this can actually be registered companies that are not authorized, to get
Right.
investments or from people.
And you think, di ba, we have the whole SIM registration law, and so
I still get texts every day.
exactly
Yeah.
on a daily.
Yeah. Like scam texts.
Doesn't stop them.
Yeah, exactly. But the hope is that with harsher penalties, maybe it'll deter people.
Well, we'll see
Hopefully.
because SIM registration was not enough and that didn't work. But there is
Yeah.
apparently
It's like that game whack-a-mole talaga.
yeah.
Like
Right,
with
they'll
the
just
authorities
try
trying
and
to change.
try.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
There's so many millions of ways that they go about it. There's even apparently a new scam,
a QR code scam.
scam.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works. I guess
I guess
take
we
a
should be
photo-
lucky. We don't know
I
how
guess you
it
take
works.
a photo of somebody's QR code, and then that serves as your, because you can use that QR code to pay, to transfer money, right?
It's apparently the scam works because other people can get your financials or your financial
Yeah.
details
Yes.
and use it to make transactions.
Yes, correct. So I
because-
can take your QR code basically,
Right.
and I don't know,
and maybe use it
try to log
pay
in. or-
something
Yes.
somewhere else.
Yes.
Mm.
Or I go to
Delikado
Starbucks
yun,
and
ah.
my drink is on you or something. I don't know.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so yay for this bill. Hopefully it passes soon.
All right, we're going to take another quick break. Right after that, President Marcos is looking to relax regulations on motorcycle taxis and ride-sharing services following his meeting with Grab executives. We'll discuss that further when the big story returns. Keep it here. Welcome back. You're still watching The Big Story here on One News.
President Marcos says the government is working with Grab Philippines to legalize, or rather Grab, the company, to legalize motorcycle taxis and ease rules on transport network vehicle services. In a courtesy call in Malacanang earlier today, Marcos met with executives from Grab, led by Grab Holdings Incorporated co-founder and chief executive officer Anthony Tan. There, Marcos welcomed Grab's contribution to generating local employment in the country as the administration carries out initiatives to provide more jobs to Filipinos. He said, quote, "Your impact on unemployment numbers comprises about 1.1% of the increase in employment in the past year and a half." That was Grab. So that's the 300,000 that we're talking about has a significant effect. For his part, Anthony Tan told the president that when they bought Move It in a successful acquisition, the company was doing about 8,000 rides a day, which has now increased to over 300,000 every day. Tan added that with the president's support, Grab can attain such ridership in 6 months. Recall that Grab previously recommended the deregulation of the supply of Transport Network Vehicle Services, or TNVSs, and the legalization of motorcycle taxis. So my correction there was that it's not Grab Philippines, it's Grab, the parent company, which
Like
is
the
headquartered.
actual real Grab.
Correct. This is the co-founder, Anthony Tan, who came all the way from Singapore to meet with the president and lobby for this.
But apparently, it's also not the first meeting. He also had been to Malacanang just some months ago. So it looks like they're really pushing hard. Any idea why they seem to be pushing so hard on the Philippines, Reg?
It depends on who you ask. There is a so for commuters, they feel like there is a shortage in TNVSs, right? So I take Grab regularly, for instance, and I do feel sometimes it's quite hard to book, especially during rush hours.
There's really like a demand here, for their service.
My complaint is that I'm too cheap to even ride Grab. When I see the prices quoted to me on the app, I am horrified.
Yeah, that's
It's
true.
so expensive.
Yes. It has gotten more expensive, and that's also partly due to rising fuel costs, right? And at the same time, a lot of drivers are complaining that their share of the income has been
Gotten
whittled
smaller,
down.
right.
Yeah, has been
So
whittled
their
down.
share of the pie is now smaller, despite the
not
higher
sure.
prices.
So it seems like the costs were going, the day's revenues were going mostly towards operating expenses. So it's traffic, so you burn more fuel, so fuel is expensive, etc., etc. So that's their complaint, right? But in any case, so Grab has been lobbying to legalize motorcycle taxi, and they're also applied to remove the supply cap on TNVSs. They applied on February 10 so that they can meet the demand of 100,000 TNVS licenses.
Actually, I
the
remember-
Transportation Department also said, the Transport Department hasn't committed, they just said this needs further study.
Yeah. Actually, I remember the reason why they put the cap to begin with. It was because traffic was really so bad before COVID. This all happened before COVID. And the traffic was so bad that the LTFRB started regulating the allowable number of TNVS cars to kind of manage a traffic situation. And then COVID hit, and they were disallowed totally. None of us were allowed to go anywhere. When they started to come back, the number had severely gone down. The number of allowed TNVS cars on the road were so few. I actually assumed that was a supply and demand thing on the algorithm that raised the prices up.
Currently, there are about 40,000 drivers registered with Grab, TNVS, with around 30,000 operating just in Metro Manila alone.
That's why. Okay, so that's why they're applied to lift the supply cap, because
Right.
they're trying to
Get more.
work it up to
Right.
about 100,000.
They want to onboard more drivers, and hopefully that will bring costs down, because I mean sometimes one trip costs more than minimum wage, which is
It
so
does.
untenable. It's so unacceptable for me. I'm so cheap. I don't want to pay for it. It's ridiculous.
But at the same time, there's a question of will the DOTR and LTFRB allow it, right? This is always a tenuous issue with them. I remember the many hearings from years ago when the TNVSs were trying to legalize the service, right? So LTFRB says if you want to convert your automobile into a
TNVS unit.
TNVS unit, for instance, you need a provisional franchise from them. So now you have to deal with these two agencies, basically, right? So I don't know if that's going to get fixed, but
Well, the other thing that they're pushing for is to finally legislate the motorcycle taxi law.
I think a lot of people don't know this, but they're actually technically illegal.
It was so bizarre, Riza, because just the other night we happened to be talking about this about maybe 4 or 5 nights ago. I was telling Reg, can you believe they have been operating on a pilot study since the Duterte administration? And it has been, I think, 4 or 5 years maybe that they're operating under the pilot study. The whole point of the pilot study is so that they can legislate based on the data from the study, but it still hasn't come around. Right. And I even remember that Grab used to have a Grab motorcycle taxi, which was canceled because this was, before Angkas and Joyride and all of that. And then eventually they just was able to acquire Move It, and now it's on the street, and I'm not actually sure how it got there. So a lot of questions.
But anyway, technically speaking, legally speaking, the law prohibits the use of motorcycles to transport passengers and cargo. That's what the law says. This is the part that maybe needs to be updated. Talking about charter change, right? You can't transport passengers or cargo, and then as Sean said, they just began
through
testing
motorcycles.
Yes.
Actually, I found out, Riza, that this was I was telling Regina. Do you based on our law or under our law, you can't even deliver pizza using motorcycles.
Technically not. But think of all the people who rely on Grab Food now, right? Food Panda, Grab Food. Then you've got Angkas, you've got Joyride. Also Tok Tok, don't forget.
Everything.
Yeah, Tok Tok's a bit smaller, but
just all of them.
Yeah, exactly. So technically all of that is, if you follow the law, is not allowed.
It's illegal.
This is what they need to look into, and that's probably why Grab has had another meeting with President Marcos, who acknowledges that, it has contributed to the economy. But also, I might point out that although Malacanang says that they've contributed to the employment, they're actually technically not full-time employees. They're not considered employees.
Maybe they should have used the word livelihood or
there is
options to make money.
Because they're on a freelance
gig economy.
Right,
gig
it's like
workers,
a freelance work.
They're gig workers, that's what they're called. They're not employees because they're not employed by the company.
And they don't
have
get
health
benefits.
They don't get anything, right?
They don't get a set salary
It's a
per
revenue sharing model. They're gig workers, right? You hold your own time, you don't report to the office, and so on and so forth. So
but I understand where President Marcos is coming from. I mean, it does provide means to earn money.
It is a boost to the economy.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of outdated laws and things that the government has to look into, a number of e-bike riders who continued to use EDSA were apprehended by traffic enforcers today. Remember that e-bikes are likewise not allowed along major roads. So umaga pa lang kanina, mainit na ang mga MMDA traffic enforcers sa Pasay Rotonda. They stopped e-bikes and e-trike riders attempting to use the EDSA route. The e-trike, e-bikes, and even pedicabs were temporarily impounded under the Ortigas flyover. But because there is no policy yet providing fines on how to redeem these vehicles and how much, riders can still claim them right now without paying, but they will have to think of ways to bring them home without passing through EDSA. Now that's a challenge.
Marami na po tayo na monitor na complaint coming from different walks, no? Meron sa mga private citizens, social media, yung iba naman po even the local government na po nila na nagko-complain. Tulad po niyan, marami po tayo naabutan ng mga e-trikes, e-bikes, and even sidecar that are traversing the EDSA, which is talagang bawal po sila.
So sa ngayon, binubuo pa lang ng MMDA, ng LTO, ng LTFRB yung mga guidelines on how to regulate and how to register these suddenly very, very popular e-bikes and trikes. Right? And so for now, they're all running on an administrative order from the LTO, and that is the basis that the MMDA is using to catch them, no? Or sa paghuhuli sa kanila pag dumadaan sila sa mga national roads or big highways like EDSA. And according to MMDA Special Operations Group Head Gabriel Go, ito ang masasabi niya sa sitwasyon.
Kailangan natin hulihin dahil unang-una, it provides a nature of yung pwede silang madisgrasya dahil yung mga e-bikes, ang mga tricycle, they are not built to be at par with the speed of the four-wheel vehicles. And pangalawa, yun nga po bawal na po sila sa EDSA, sila pa po ang gumigitna at humahari-hari po dito sa kalsada.
But you know, MMDA also recognized na hindi ito magiging madali. Alam nila, babalik at babalik pa rin sila sa kalsada. Alam mo yung magiging technically parang pasaway, di ba? Pagkatapos ng operasyon, they don't see the MMDA officers anymore. Then, lalabas sila ulit. Pero, sa part naman ng MMDA, they said, hindi naman din sila magsasawang manghuli up until mapasa na nga yung mga guidelines to be able to regulate.
Well, even local government units have started to clamp down on the use of three-wheeled vehicles in major roads. Let's bring in reporter JC Cosico, who has the details. JC, what do you have?
Reg, more and more LGUs are implementing stricter policies over the use of e-bikes, pedicabs, and tricycles in national highway. In San Mateo, for one, e-bikes and other light vehicles are no longer allowed to use the national highway. This in compliance with a DALG memo issued last December. E-bike riders are dismayed, saying it restricts their access to basic establishments. Most of them use e-bikes as personal service to save up on commute.
Paano naman yung mga ruta na katulad niyan, yung mga pupunta ka sa fast food, pupunta ka sa grocery, nasa main road sila eh. Sana i-consider naman lalo na sa mga senior citizen, may PWD, nahihirapan sila.
The LGU meanwhile said e-motorists can use inner roads. In their case, there are 14 side roads that they can use to cross the national road.
Makakarating ka rin naman eh. You just probably have to go on a longer route. Pero you will still reach your final destination safely.
For tricycle drivers, the new policy makes it harder to pick up passengers.
Kung dadaan kami kasi sa mga kalsada, alternative route, wala kaming madampot din na pasahero dahil yung mga looban na dadaanan namin ay may mga nagkalat na terminal ng colorum. Kukonsumo kami ng gasolina dahil malayo, hindi naman kami makakasingil ng para sa amin.
Sa gasolina naman talagang hirap na kami. Pinakamaganda niyan, bago patupad yan, magdagdag sila ng kalsadang dadaanan.
Data from DLGU show that road accidents involving e-bikes and tricycles have gone up last year, from 131 cases in 2022 to 208 cases in 2023. Reg, the LGU calls for compliance and understanding from the riding public, saying the new policy is part of road safety precautions. So far, 49 riders have been apprehended for violating road guidelines. Violators face fines amounting to 2,500 pesos for the first and second offense, while tricycle drivers could lose their franchise on the third offense. Back to you.
The point. We all need to drive safe, otherwise no one is safe. Thanks for that update, News 5's JC Cosico.
Maganda yung pinoint out ni JC. Yung nakausap niyang lady, e-bike driver, and she said, paano kung PWD? Oh my gosh, our streets are so unfriendly to PWDs.
Not
Even
just the
public
streets.
transport
Yeah.
is so unfriendly to PWDs. Kung wala kang pang-grab na baka yung driver tutulungan ka with like,
So
let's say, your
ito yung
wheelchair.
solution.
It's really so hard and so unfair. Ang hirap-hirap talaga. May kapansanan ka na nga, hindi ka pa maka-travel.
Exactly.
Okay, so ito na lang. Netflix has been busy promoting its upcoming feature film. And one ad that has been going around is the so-called Apa Air, starring none other than Melay Cantiveros. This video started off with flight attendant Melay announcing the flight ATLA 222 bound for the Philippines. Melay then recited the iconic intro to the original Avatar: The Last Airbender cartoon before returning to herself and apologizing for the, quote, mental turbulence. Melay then recited the in-flight reminders and demonstrated her elemental powers. At syempre, Melay also promoted Philippine destinations in the ad, namely Coron in Palawan, the Chocolate Hills in Bohol, the Mayon Volcano in Albay, and the Bangi Windmills in Ilocos Norte. And of course, what would a flight advertisement be without some reminders din from Melay? Netflix live-action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender is set to premiere on February 22. Is that tomorrow? That is tomorrow.
That is tomorrow.
That is tomorrow.
That is tomorrow.
Are you a fan of The Last Airbender? I unfortunately
not
did not.
really.
No,
They did not watch it, but everyone around me is a huge fan, super waiting for the release of
Right.
this.
Tomorrow should be big for them.
I don't know, I'm not sure if I should watch the live action one or should I, back watch the animated one first.
I don't know.
Do you have enough time?
That's maybe the question.
All right, before we go, time for our big picture tonight. And it's none other than President Bongbong Marcos inspecting the airport to New Clark City access road. So, finally, it's up. Now, during the president's inspection, he emphasized the strengthening of Clark's position as an investment and tourism destination through the ANAR. The president likewise expressed appreciation to the Bases Conversion and Development Authority, or BCDA, for all its endeavors in converting the former military lands into economic hubs and for its continual support in modernizing our armed forces. This 20-kilometer project, with a cost of 8.42 billion pesos, serves as a dedicated access road with the goal of enhancing connectivity across Luzon.
Wow, that's such an exciting project. And that's also one of the ones that's been many years in the making, if I remember correctly.
It's a backlog from
the previous administration. They were supposed to, I think, access road. You're just touring the access road, right? To the airport.
To the airport. I think it should also go all the way to New Clark City because, again, reminder, most of us automatically assume that Clark is just in Pampanga, but it's actually so big that it crosses the border into Tarlac as well.
What happened to New Clark City? At one point, it was being touted as the next
economic hub.
Yes.
Well,
and then,
maybe that's why
all the fuss kind of died down. Maybe that's why the connectivity to
But
it.
this should help.
It should help.
It should help.
As you guys know, I'm a fan of the Clark Airport. I would rather fly out of there than NAIA.
Oh, wow, you flew out of Clark last time.
Yeah, despite the airfares being, almost the same really as NAIA. And that's because
the facilities are nicer?
The facilities are nicer, and with all the highways, I know I will get there, let's say, in 2 hours from my house. And I'd like that rather than the question mark of trying to get to NAIA.
And miss your flight.
And miss my flight. I have run down the Skyway, literally. And as I was checking in, I literally opened my maleta. I had to get fresh clothes. I was soaking wet. Imagine rolling your maleta downhill on the Skyway off-ramp. It's insane.
Because it wasn't moving.
It wasn't moving.
Yeah, your
Sorry, when you got
leave.
there. You mean when you got there now?
I only got to the NAIA Terminal 3.
Oh, NAIA. I thought you meant Clark.
No, NAIA. That's why I.
That's
why I go to Clark.
I thought
I
thought traffic around Clark. How is that possible?
It is actually very traffic around Clark because you have to pass Angeles sometimes or the Dau exit.
But in the area around the airport should be better.
It is super
much
maluwag.
better.
If this access road proves all that it's worth, then I think it should be a breeze to get to the airport. So now I have no more reason to fly out of NAIA until they fix it.
It's far, except that you have to budget in another extra 2 hours.
Well, how many hours do you budget in extra to go to the NAIA?
That's true.
It's the same.
Yeah, when you add it up, I guess it's not that far off.
It's not that far off. It's just a longer car ride, but it's a definite amount of time. I just prefer to travel with that certainty.
Yeah. That you're
And
not
not
going to have to
sweaty.
lug your luggage down a ramp, like huffing and puffing, trying to get to your gate in time.
Right?
I think that's an image that a lot of us can relate to, hey?
It is. Okay, on that note and on that mental image, we're going to end the big story on this Wednesday night.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Good night, and I have to wish my friend's mom a happy birthday. She watches One News and Signal every day. Thanks
Happy
for tuning
birthday.
in.
Birthday.